Living with certain people in old age is like sharing a roof with a gas leak. You can't see it, but day by day, it steals your air, your energy, your hope. Many believe that the hardest part of growing old is a failing body or fading memories, but that's not it. The most devastating thing is living with someone who chips away at your peace, belittles your experience, or drags you down with their bitterness. The greatest danger isn't always outside. Sometimes it's sleeping in the room next door. Today, I'm going to speak to you bluntly, because if you don't choose carefully who you allow into your life, this stage, which could be your freest, deepest, and most fulfilling, will turn into an unjust punishment. And the final lesson I'll share might hurt, but it could also give you the courage you've been searching for all these years. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. Stay with me until the end, because this time you won't just reflect, you'll make decisions that could change your life. How long are you going to let yourself be used as an emotional crutch without even getting a thank you? How many more times are you going to put up with people only coming around when they need something, treating you like an endless well of favors, patience, and time? You're at the first point of this video, and I want to talk to you about a kind of person who, if you don't recognize them in time, can sink you without you even realizing it. The one who demands without giving anything in return. There are people who don't know how to receive without asking for more. They live with their hand out, but their heart closed. They call you to vent, but never ask how you're doing. They visit you, sure, but only when they need something. And you, out of fear of loneliness, out of that old wound that makes you believe you're only worth what you can give, keep saying yes. You keep opening the door as if it were an act of love, when in reality, it's an act of abandonment of yourself. I know the story of Claire, a woman in her 70s. Her whole life, she was the backbone of her family. Widowed for years, her children grew up and moved on, and they remember her more often when there's trouble than when there's joy. Her grandson needs a ride to school. Claire is there. Her daughter needs someone to watch the dog while she travels with her partner. Claire says yes. A neighbor asks for help filling out paperwork he doesn't understand. Claire takes care of it. But when she falls ill or simply needs someone to listen, there's no one. No calls, no messages, not even a short visit. Claire has built a prison with her own hands, brick by brick, every time she said it's fine when it wasn't. Every time she postponed her rest, her pleasure, her peace, to serve others. The Stoics spoke about duty, yes, but not about senseless sacrifice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do what you must, not what destroys you." Are you doing that? Because allowing someone to constantly feed off your energy without giving anything back isn't love, it's negligence. Not toward them, but toward yourself. Maybe you think helping is a way to stay useful, that if you stop, you'll stop mattering. But that's a lie you've repeated so many times it feels like truth. Your value isn't in what you do for others, it's in who you are, even when you're doing nothing. Is that hard to believe? Of course it is. Because for decades, you were taught your worth lies in what you produce, in what you give, in how available you are. But it's time to break that pattern. God doesn't ask you to wear yourself out until there's nothing left. He asks you to be a light, and a lamp that isn't recharged eventually goes out. Jesus would retreat to pray, to be alone, to regain strength. Why don't you? Why is it so hard for you to say, "Today I can't"? What part of your story made you believe that loving means forgetting yourself? Don't confuse kindness with servitude. Kindness cares, but it also cares for itself. Kindness knows how to say no. Kindness chooses who to share its energy with because it understands not every heart knows how to receive without consuming. Listen carefully. You are not obligated to be anyone's emotional support, especially not for someone who doesn't know how to support you in return. If today you recognize that you live with someone who only demands, who drains your time and your strength, and rarely, if ever, gives you anything back beyond silence or more demands, then it's time to act. You are not alone, and you don't have to accept relationships that drain you just to avoid sitting in silence, because sometimes chosen solitude is more dignified than company that doesn't know how to love. This is just the beginning. And if this has shaken you, just wait for what's next. Because there are types of people who, if you don't identify them and create distance, won't just ruin your days, they can break your soul. Let's move on to the next one. When you start realizing how much you've given without receiving even the bare minimum in return, something inside you shifts. You can no longer look the same way at those who have used you as an emotional crutch. And that's when another wound appears, more subtle, but just as corrosive, the way they speak to you, as if you were incapable, clumsy, or a burden. We've reached the second key point of this video, and it's about those who treat you as if you're useless. Maybe they don't say it with cruel words. Sometimes, all it takes is a condescending look, a sigh of impatience, a decision made for you without even asking. As if your opinion had expired along with your age. As if having lived longer somehow diminished your authority instead of adding to it. This kind of treatment, often coming from children, grandchildren, or close acquaintances, isn't just a lack of respect. It's a silent form of emotional violence that slowly erodes your self-esteem and sense of identity. Stoicism teaches that we cannot control how others treat us, but we can decide what value we give to their words. Epictetus said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." But what happens when those opinions come from the very people you should be able to trust? What happens when every gesture carries the unspoken message? You can't handle this. Let it go. Over time, this creates an internal fracture. You begin to doubt yourself. You're afraid to try new things for fear they'll say you can't. You stop sharing ideas because no one takes them seriously. And without even realizing it, you start dimming that inner flame you fought so hard to keep alive, the flame that represents your experience, your voice, your story. How many times have you stayed silent just to avoid conflict? How many times have you accepted others making decisions for your life because you believed you no longer had the strength to defend your own thoughts? But you weren't born to be silenced. You didn't make it this far just to be treated like a burden. Your age is not a mistake or a limitation, it's your crown. You've lived through personal wars, losses, sacrifices, invisible efforts, and you're still here. If someone can't see the immense value in that, the problem isn't with you, it's with their emotional blindness. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that human dignity is never lost unless we choose to give it away. And it's not about rebelling with shouting or demands. It's about facing things head-on, with serenity and firmness, and making it clear that you are still here. That you haven't given up on being yourself. That your voice matters. That your opinion counts. Because every time you accept being treated like another piece of furniture, a problem to be solved, an item on someone's to-do list, you move further away from your right to live with dignity. Spirituality also teaches us something essential. We were created with a purpose, and that purpose doesn't fade with the passing of years. God doesn't set you aside because your hair has turned gray. He doesn't make you invisible. You are part of His plan until the very last day, and that plan never includes silent humiliation. What some call old age, the Creator calls wisdom, and those who can't see it have not yet learned to look with the eyes of the soul. If today you recognize that someone treats you as if you're less, as if your time has passed, start by changing the way you see yourself. Look in the mirror and remember who you were and who you still are. Then start speaking clearly, not from anger, but from firmness. Thank you for your help, but I can make my own decisions. I don't need you to do everything for me, just to listen. These phrases are not acts of rebellion. They are affirmations of life. Because if you don't stand up for your value, no one else will do it for you. Don't let yourself be erased. Don't let others narrate your story as if it no longer matters. You still have so much to say, so much to teach, and above all, so much to live. And to do that, you need to surround yourself with people who speak to you with respect, who see you as a whole person, not as a failed project because of your age. Let's keep going, because what comes next reveals another kind of harmful presence, one that, if you don't learn to recognize it, can infect you with its dark view of life and drag you into the abyss of discouragement. Don't miss it. When you've been spoken to as if you're incapable for long enough, you might start to believe it. You might begin to silence yourself, to shrink, to ask permission just to exist. But there's another type of presence that's even more dangerous because it hides behind a mask of closeness while secretly feeding constant darkness. We've reached the third point of this video, and here's where things can truly start to change, if you're willing to face it, the one who brings nothing but complaints and laments. Chronic complaining is like a poison that slowly seeps into the environment. It doesn't shout, it doesn't strike, but it contaminates everything it touches. Living with someone who constantly complains about the past, the present, what they don't have, what they didn't achieve, is allowing someone else's negativity to invade your mind like a plague. And if you're not careful, you'll end up mimicking their words, their gestures, their dark outlook on life. A Stoic doesn't ignore pain, but neither do they build an altar to worship it daily. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And if you spend your days with someone who only knows how to darken, it won't be long before your own light begins to dim. Do you know why this is so dangerous in old age? Because at this stage, many live with bittersweet memories, unresolved griefs, open wounds. And if the only voice you hear every day is someone repeating that there's no way out, that everything is lost, that the world is getting worse and worse, your mind will start to give in. Let me say it again. A mind constantly exposed to complaints loses its ability to see the good. It becomes selective, but only toward the worst. It begins to ignore the small, life-giving details, the smell of coffee, the song of a bird, the light streaming through the window. And that's not aging with wisdom. That's surrendering while still alive. But there's a powerful strategy you can start applying today. It's simple, yet profound. Limit the time you spend with those who only complain. And when you can't avoid it, respond with purpose, not with reaction. The Stoic logic is clear. You can't control others' attitudes, but you can choose how you act. If someone throws their dark cloud of complaints at you, you don't have to accept it like a command. You can nod calmly and change the subject. You can mention something good that happened today. You can even choose silence, that firm silence that unsettles those who expected a complicit response. Because you're not here to perpetuate someone else's lament, you're here to build peace within yourself. Imagine for a moment that you live in a house where someone leaves a leak open every day. Little by little, the floor gets soaked, the walls stain, the air becomes heavy. That's exactly what constant complaining is like. But you can close that leak, not by mopping up their water, but by protecting your space, your mind, your faith. Because the soul can drown too if it's not shielded from the excess of hopeless words. If you've made it this far, I invite you to actively be part of this community. Subscribe to the channel and hit like if you feel this message is opening new spaces in how you see life. Tell me in the comments from which country you're listening and write the phrase, "I choose my peace," to make it clear that you're no longer willing to share your air with those who only breathe bitterness. There are still several important lessons ahead in this video, and the final one could be the difference between aging just to survive or aging with true purpose. Let's keep going. When you decide to protect your peace from those who live in a constant state of complaint, you've already taken a huge step toward emotional freedom. But even if you manage to quiet that external noise, there's another kind of silence that can hurt just as much, or even more. The silence of those who are physically close, but emotionally absent. Now we've reached the fourth point of this video, and what we're about to see isn't just a lack of attention. It's a form of invisible abandonment, the one who's always in a rush and never truly listens. This kind of absent presence is more common than you might think, and the cruelest part is that it often comes from those who claim to love you. Children who visit but stay glued to their phones, friends who only call when they need something quick, partners who, after so many years together, no longer look at you when you speak. Living with someone who never has time for you is like talking to a fogged-up mirror. You sense someone on the other side, but you can't see them clearly. And worse, you don't feel seen either. This mistake has deep roots, the false idea that sharing time is enough just by being physically present, as if physical presence alone could build connection, respect, or affection. But being physically near doesn't mean being emotionally available. And in old age, when every conversation can plant a seed of meaning, when every gesture can ease loneliness or spark joy, that emotional absence feels like a wound that doesn't bleed on the outside, but aches every single day. Stoicism isn't just about self-control and discipline, it also invites us to recognize what truly deserves our attention. Seneca said that the most valuable thing we have is time, and yet it's what we give away most carelessly. There are people who divide their time among tasks, screens, and worries, but can't offer even a single real minute of listening. That constant rush sends a devastating message that you are not a priority, that your words no longer matter, that even as your days grow shorter, they aren't worthy of a simple, sincere pause. This trap installs itself slowly. First, you stop talking because you think they're busy. Then you decide not to share how you feel because you don't want to worry them. Later, you convince yourself it's normal that no one listens, that life moves fast for everyone. And without realizing it, your voice starts to fade. But let me tell you something. With all the strength I have, your voice has not lost its value. The problem isn't that you're speaking too much, it's that you're speaking to those who don't know how to listen. And that has consequences, because the lack of true listening robs you of more than just conversation. It steals your self-esteem, your mental clarity, your desire to share. It turns you into a passive witness of your own life. And that's how disconnection begins. From others, from yourself, even from God. Because when the outside world stops listening, you might start to believe that He isn't listening either. And when that happens, it cuts deep. But you are not condemned to that indifference. You can make choices. You can firmly, and without fear, express that you need to be heard. That a dignified life isn't measured by how many tasks you complete, but by how many times someone stops to look you in the eye and truly ask how you are. And if the person who can't do that lives with you, you have every right to bring it up. Not with complaints, but with clarity. I need your time, even just a few minutes, because I'm still here, I'm still me, and I deserve to be part of your world, not just a shadow in the background. If today you recognize that you're living with someone who's always in a rush, who answers without looking at you, who interrupts you, as if your words were just noise, then it's time to act. Not to start a fight, but to reclaim your inner space. Because you are not here to become another piece of furniture. You are here to live with awareness, to share wisdom, to be an active part of this stage of life. And if no one has told you lately, let me say it to you now. Your voice still carries power. Your story deserves to be told, and whoever doesn't have time to listen is missing something that can never be replaced. Let's move forward. What comes next reveals a type of aggression even more painful because it strikes at what matters most, the things that give your life meaning. Don't look away. We've reached the 5th point of this video, and if what you've heard so far has stirred something inside you, what's coming next might hurt even more. Because there's no wound more unfair than being ridiculed for what sustains you. Someone who mocks your faith or your beliefs isn't just attacking your way of thinking. They're striking at your very roots, the foundation that has given you the strength to endure everything you've lived through up to now. Few things can drain the soul more than sharing a roof with someone who despises what you hold sacred. It could be a son who jokes every time he sees you pray, a grandson who rolls his eyes when you mention God, a partner who, whenever you share a spiritual reflection, either changes the subject or throws a mocking remark your way. And you, to avoid conflict, to not seem old-fashioned, to not make waves, stay silent. You swallow it. You stay quiet. But each time you do, you erase a little piece of yourself. You don't stop believing, but you start hiding. And sooner or later that hiding explodes into sadness, resentment, or a loss of meaning so deep, it's hard to put into words. For many of you watching this video, faith isn't a decoration. It's the pillar that has supported decades of effort, grief, sacrifice, and hope. It's the place you return to when everything else falls apart. The connection to something greater than yourself. It doesn't matter if you call it God, spirit, truth, or inner silence. Whoever doesn't respect that doesn't respect you. Period. Because you don't have to share someone's belief to respect it. If there's real love, there is respect. And if there's no respect, it's not companionship, it's hidden aggression. Continuing to tolerate this kind of relationship only leads to one place: the deep frustration of feeling like your essence is a burden, that your truth is inconvenient, that your spirituality is something to be hidden away. And over time, that destroys your desire to share yourself. It isolates you. It locks you into a silent faith, not out of devotion, but out of fear. And spirituality lived in fear isn't freedom, it's captivity. But you can still turn this around. Not through confrontation, but through clarity. Because this change doesn't start with them, it starts with you. You have to stop asking for permission to be yourself. Faith isn't something you ask for, it's something you live. Your beliefs aren't something to hide, they're something to stand for. Don't wait for validation. You don't need others to understand you in order to keep believing. You need to decide today that you will no longer be silent. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, that's not your problem. You weren't called to please, you were called to stand firm. The change will come when you realize your spirituality is part of your dignity, that you can't keep lowering your voice every time you talk about what gives you strength. There's no need to shout, but there is a need to stand tall. Because when you respect what you believe, the world starts to understand that there is a line that cannot be crossed, that there is sacred ground where mockery is not allowed. Don't expect miracles from those who refuse to see, but you can set boundaries. You can say, "This is important to me, and I'm not going to hide it." You can distance yourself emotionally, even if you live under the same roof. You can decide that your faith, your values, your ideas are not up for negotiation, because if you don't defend them, no one else will. Old age isn't a time for surrender, it's a time for definition. And if you're still here, with doubts, with wounds, but also with hope, then you still have the power to choose how you walk this part of the journey. Let it not be from shame, but from strength. Let it not be from fear, but from truth. Because what sustains you inside is more important than any hurtful word that comes from outside. Never forget that. Now we're about to step into an even more intimate place, when the enemy isn't a person, but the way they remind you every day of everything you supposedly can't do anymore. Don't go anywhere. You need to hear this too. If you've ever felt the weight of having to hide your faith just to avoid mockery, if you've had to silence what gives your life meaning out of fear of being looked at with contempt, then you know what it means to live fragmented. And that fragmentation doesn't just stay in the mind or the soul, it reaches your body, your movements, the way you breathe, the way you get up each morning, because everything is connected. And now we've reached the 6th point of this video, where the blows no longer come from hurtful words, but from gestures, hints, or silences that remind you of everything you supposedly can't do anymore. The one who reminds you daily of what you can't do rarely says it directly, but they suggest it, imply it, let it drop like a stone in a pond, and then pretend to be surprised at the ripples it causes. Picture this. You get up one morning with that familiar ache in your knee, moving slowly as you prepare your breakfast. And before you've even taken your first sip of coffee, someone says, "Want me to do that for you?" Or, "That's not for you anymore," or "Better rest, you might get hurt." Sometimes they say it with kindness, but the message is the same. You can't anymore. And if you hear it often enough, you start to believe it. You start giving up spaces, tasks, decisions. You begin to fade away. Not because your body can't, but because your environment has convinced you that trying is pointless. But I want you to picture something. Close your eyes for a moment, if you can. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, in the same house, with the same people who today keep reminding you of what you're no longer capable of. See yourself giving up more and more ground. First, you stopped going for walks because they said it was dangerous. Then you stopped cooking because you might get burned. Later, you stopped picking your own clothes because they don't match well. And one day, you realize you no longer even choose when you eat, who you talk to, or what you watch on TV. You have stopped living, and no one warned you. No one shouted that you were disappearing. They did it quietly, with good intentions and sweet tones, but they erased you. Do you see it? That's the trap. It's not aging that limits you. It's the narrative you accept. It's that slow-acting poison served to you under the guise of care. And the cruelest part is that if you don't open your eyes, you'll end up thanking them. You'll thank them for treating you like that, thinking it's love, when really it's control disguised as protection. Stoicism never denied the limitations of the body, but it taught something vital. You are not just your body, you are your will. You are your attitude. You are what you choose to do with what you have. Marcus Aurelius, even while suffering from painful illnesses, never allowed his body to define his spirit. He remained the emperor of his mind. And you can too, if you decide to stop accepting that age is a limit. It's a stage, not a sentence. The problem isn't that someone helps you. The problem is when they no longer let you try, when they take away your right to fail, the pleasure of effort, the possibility of discovering that you still can. And that leaves you alone, not physically, but inside. It disconnects you from your own will, your curiosity, your ability to choose. And when that is lost, what remains is routine, dependency, and that subtle feeling that you're a burden. But there's still time. You can still walk at your own pace, cook something simple, say clearly, "I want to do this myself." Not to prove anything to anyone, but to remind yourself that you're still alive, that you're still you, that your body may move slower, but your dignity does not have to crawl. And if someone in your life keeps pointing out everything you supposedly can't do anymore, then speak up. Say it calmly, but firmly. Thank you for your help, but I need you to trust me. I'm not a shadow. I'm still here. Because someone who truly loves you will learn how to support you without erasing you. And those who can't need to understand that caring is not controlling and loving is not replacing. What's coming next touches an even deeper point. It's no longer about what they say or imply. It's about the atmosphere you breathe when you live with someone who doesn't know how to be at peace. Someone who, even in silence, pollutes every corner. Don't miss it. This is the heart of it all. What could decide whether your coming years will be a refuge or a battlefield? If you've seen yourself in any of these situations so far, in the mockery, in the silencing, in the limitations disguised as care, you know this isn't an exaggeration. It's your daily life, the way things have slowly shaped themselves without you even noticing, drop by drop, until it formed a puddle of resignation where you can barely move. And when your body no longer responds the way it used to, when your voice isn't as firm, and when the calendar starts to weigh heavier, the last thing you need is an environment that plants tension instead of peace. Now we've reached the 7th point of this video, and it might be the quietest, the hardest to detect, but also the most lethal, the one who doesn't know how to be at peace. They don't have to yell. They don't need to insult or impose their will aggressively. Their mere presence is enough to change the atmosphere, to tighten your breathing, to make the day feel longer than it is. It could be someone you share a home with, a routine, even a bed, and yet they don't bring you rest because they don't know how to live without conflict. They can't tolerate silence without filling it with complaints or a quiet afternoon without turning it into judgment or criticism. These are people carrying an inner war they don't recognize, and they project it onto everyone else as if the world had to pay for their emptiness. And you, to avoid confrontation, to not make things worse, out of fear of being alone, end up accepting it as normal. You tell yourself it's too late to change, that everyone has their flaws, that the important thing is not being alone. But that's not true. You weren't born to live in a constant state of tension. You didn't come this far to merely survive under an atmosphere poisoned by someone else's bad temper, impatience, or bitterness. Because that violence without shouting, that aggression without blows, leaves wounds too. Wounds you can't see, but that rob you of sleep, harden your soul, and make you believe that peace is a luxury you can no longer afford. And this is where I want you to truly stop and think. Because if after everything you've heard, you're still making excuses, still saying, it's not that bad, still justifying the one who steals your calm, then no reflection will help. Nothing will change if you don't decide to change. Nothing gets better if you don't take responsibility for your part. Maybe you can't make that person leave, maybe you can't move away, but you can start setting limits, protecting your space, guarding your mind, because if you don't fight for your peace, no one else will. Real transformation doesn't come from wishing. It comes from deciding. And deciding means taking responsibility. It means stopping blaming others and starting to build from within. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with the conviction that you still have the right to live in peace, to breathe without fear, to wake up without tension, to share your time with someone who knows how to simply be without destroying. You don't need crowds. You need quality. You need company that knows how to be present without crushing you, that knows how to listen without weighing you down, that knows how to love without hurting. And if you don't have that right now, don't fake it. Because pretending there's peace in a toxic place is like painting flowers on a cracked wall. Sooner or later, it all falls apart. You deserve better. Not out of pity, but out of justice. Because you've made it this far with scars, yes, but also with a strength many don't even understand. Don't waste it. Don't hand it over to someone who doesn't know how to respect it. This is the moment to decide. Because what's coming next isn't just a closing, it's a direct call to your conscience, your faith, and your dignity. Stay with me until the end. You need to hear this. If you've made it this far, it's not by accident. Very few people dare to look uncomfortable truths in the eye. Most prefer the easy comfort, the denial, the "it's not that bad" that lets them keep surviving in a routine that's slowly extinguishing them. But you've listened to every word. You've withstood the weight of every reflection without looking away. And that says something powerful about you. There's still fire inside you. You have not given up. You still want to take back control of your life and live these years with the dignity, peace, and strength you deserve. Today, I haven't offered you magic solutions. I haven't told you that everything will get better just by thinking positively or being endlessly patient. I've spoken to you with the bluntness that reality demands when it gets heavy. I've shown you what happens when you share your life with those who don't know how to care for you, respect you, or listen to you. And I've also told you something you cannot forget. You can change your story. It doesn't matter if you've been repeating the same pattern for decades. It doesn't matter if your surroundings refuse to move. The first step, the hardest step, depends only on you. And it starts today. I want to ask you for something specific. If this video has made you think, if anything we've shared here has resonated with your story, leave me a comment with the phrase, "I choose my peace," and tell me which country you're watching from. Because I want to know who you are. The ones who, like you, have decided not to stay silent anymore, not to settle for relationships that drain them, not to resign themselves to living old age as a punishment. I want to read your story, and I want others to read it too. Because in this community, every story matters. Every awakening matters. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. This space doesn't exist to pat you on the back or sugarcoat pain with pretty words. It exists to shake you, to show you that you can still take the helm of your life, even if the seas are rough. Here we speak with truth, with respect, with philosophy, and with faith. Because we believe old age is not a downfall, it's an opportunity to rise, with greater wisdom and less fear. And if you believe that too, I invite you to subscribe right now, not just as someone who follows a channel, but as someone who joins a community that has decided to wake up. That has said enough. That wants to live with purpose. Share this video with someone who needs to open their eyes. They may not say it out loud, but they need it. And don't let this conversation end here. 2 more videos will appear beside this one that can continue stirring something inside you. Choose one. Keep going, because this journey doesn't end today. It's just beginning.